Okay, we are live. I'm super excited today. I say that every time, but this time I think I really am. We have awesome guests here, but also our regular roster, FlareVet. Um, we, are blessed to be together doing these. I think we're, you know, coming after a year of starting this. This is taking shape. I'm really proud of what we're doing. So, Bill, Greg, Dave, Chris are here today. Um, and then we have Adam Wysocki. I actually asked him in person how to say his last name just for this moment. So, pretty proud of myself. I said it right, got it right. So, a lot of us know him. He's been in the software tech industry for a long time. Eventually, he made the jump to vet medicine with Vitas Vet. I don't know if you did anything with vet stuff before that, but that's what we all remember, I think, the most. You
Yeah.
were the CEO and in charge of that company, and then you went on your own to do Vet Software Hub, which a lot of people respect and really like what you're doing because it really is very independent and very honest and open, and that's what we need more of in vet med. More honest. Opinions on things, not anything skewed by sponsors or whatever. So I really respect that. And I'm gonna start with Adam asking a question here real quick.
Sure.
So even before Vitas Vet, what pulled you into vet med? What about veterinary medicine made you do the jump from just tech software to vet med? What's cool about veterinarians?
Um, they're nerds like me generally, right? Which I love. I'm a computer guy. I wrote my first software program in 1984. I've been writing code my whole life. But I've always been a pet guy. I've always, I started doing animal rescue in high school. Um,
Cool.
just love companion animals. When I was a young kid, I wanted to be a marine biologist until I realized they don't make any money. Then that kind of pivoted me. But
Yep.
I joined the Marine Corps at high school, learned how to code, had friendships with veterinarians over my life in different places that I lived. Back about 12 years ago, long before Vitas Vet, I worked with a veterinarian to build a site called Pawbly, which was one of the early telehealth sites. And she was upset about Dr. Google and her clients Googling symptoms and looking for answers.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted to create a site where veterinarians could, donate time to answer questions and connect with pet owners offline outside of normal business hours. So that was kind of my first intro, and then moved into some other verticals, and then got recruited to Vitas Vet about 6-7 years ago.
Okay, so that was your entry into the space, and I guess that's where you started, kind of getting exposed to vets and software and what the needs are for vets and all that, and ended up in what you're doing now.
Yeah, for
Vet
sure.
Software Hub. Yeah, tell us about Vet Software Hub. I think everybody in this call knows. Greg eating cereal is distracting me now. It's making me laugh. Uh,
Yeah.
Sometimes we
So
need to eat breakfast before we start these calls, but it's all good. Yeah. So tell us about Vet Software Hub. What do we do in there?
Yeah, so Vet Software Hub, it's the largest independent listing of veterinary software on the internet. So there's 192 products listed now. I think
Okay.
there's 23 or 24 categories. So trying to just capture, all the practice management software, all the online pharmacies, all of the client communication software, and have them in one place. And there were a lot of ideas that drove the creation of the site. But one of the main ones was like, if I'm a practice manager or a hospital owner and I'm going to start researching veterinary software, like, how do I do that? Like Google, Facebook groups. And then I've got to go like site to site to site and like look at what they offer, what their pricing information is, if they're there. So the original idea was kind of bring it all onto one site. So you could just come to Vet Software Hub, and if you're looking for a new payment processor, here's 10 that specialize in veterinary space. And you could see if they're integrated and what their rates are. Same thing with PIMS. And hopefully save you guys a lot of time out of your day, week, month, whatever, as you're doing research. And that was, that was one of the many original ideas that led me to this thing.
Okay. How do like when one competitor sees that you post another competitor's software, is there backlash with that? Like, I can imagine, like, people are reaching out to you like, hey, do my PIMS, don't put my competition on there, or I don't want to be on there if you have my competition. How do you manage that part?
So anybody can submit software. So there's a, submit your listing, submit your product button right on the front page. I do have AI agents that are crawling the web, looking for veterinary software, trying to find new products. I curate everything, so it just doesn't go up there automatically. I want to make sure that it's an honest representation of their website. I try and, make it not be like a sales pitch. I really want it to be an informational type listing. So sometimes I'll have to say to the vendor, hey, I can't put an image that says sale, sale, sale. It's not a used car lot, right? We're trying to convey what you do and what you have to offer. And I think the vendors are, for the most part, very happy about the site. One of the problems in the industry and for software vendors in veterinary is it's a limited, there's limited search options for digital advertising. So like Google ads, if you're doing Google keyword ads for practice management software, they charge by clicks. Some of those clicks are $70, $80, $90 for a click because it's such intense competition. Then if you're selling, post-appointment client education software, right? That's not a very often searched term. So by bringing all of this software together, I'm doing very well ranking in Google. And then it's like a discovery type engine. So you might show up looking for, a new client communications tool, and then just find some really cool client education software that you're like, oh, wow, I would love to have that in my practice. Because it's just there and you're kind of stumbling around the site a little bit.
Yeah. And one thing we respect a lot about you is that you're really objective about all these things. I've heard you speak of how, there's not one fits all product. There's not, everybody has to kind of do their research and learn what works for them individually. And that's what you're here for.
It's very important to me that I'm vendor neutral for two reasons. One, if visitors of the site think that I'm biased even a little bit, right, the site instantly loses its value, right? You never know if what you're looking at is really an honest representation. But I think the other thing that really sticks in my mind all the time is, there's software out there that I've had experiences with that I don't personally like. If I owned a hospital, I wouldn't use it. But I never badmouth that software because somewhere in the country, there's a 30-something practice manager, and he or she chose that software and convinced the owner to sign off on it. And the hospital's doing great with it. They're not having any problems. And if I go on my LinkedIn account as the Vet Software Hub guy and start bashing it, that hospital owner is going to say to his practice manager, what the hell did you do? Why did you get this crap for us? Right? Every hospital.
And I think what's bad for one hospital is not bad for the other. So it's hard to generalize it's good or bad, right?
Yeah. If these companies were that terrible, they'd be out of business. Do they have bad experiences with customers? Absolutely. I think they all do. Right.
Yep. We're going to talk about that for sure.
Right.
That's going to be part of the talk, but yeah.
And those are the ones that you hear about, right? You don't hear about, the practice in, Tulsa, Oklahoma, that's been running on product X for 3 years and have never had a support ticket open because it just works for them. And then you have you could have a hospital 3 miles away that it's a nightmare, and they had it for a month and they hated it and they left, and it's the same product. Right. Like it's just the reality of software.
Can I ask you about
go ahead, Greg.
Like veterinarians uptake of software, just the whole trope of us being kind of stuck in our ways, right? You kind of graduate and I have a very quick story about, I was trying to do some telemedicine like a long time ago, and it was like brand new beta tech, and my boss was forcing me to do it and I hated it. And I was on this video call and it wasn't working. The screen was black and it wasn't working. And the CEO was like trying to monitor it. And he was calling me and texting me. He's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know. Your product sucks." And then like I noticed my webcam was just like slid closed. So like
shit.
99% of it, I was blaming the technology, but like, you know, and I was like a young grad. It's not like I was like a dinosaur at that point. So can you make a comment on just like your experience of it sounds like you're kind of a mediator between like the companies and the veterinarians, and just like some of the issues that you see on our side with our uptake of technology, or like unwillingness to kind of learn something new.
Yeah, I hear it. When I first came into the industry, a lot of people said to me, "Oh, veterinary is the worst. Like, these people are technology phobic." And I bought into that BS. Can we curse on here? Are we cursing? No.
Yeah. We usually do. Usually, it's
Everybody
usually
does
Bill.
bullshit. Like,
It's usually
that's
Bill's. That's Bill's job. But if Bill's
Yeah.
okay with you cursing, then we're good. So you don't steal the thunder.
But what I've learned after being in the industry and helping hospitals on, evaluate and onboard software is the industry isn't technology phobic. The industry is shitty software phobic, right? If you have a workflow that you've been doing for 10 years and it works, and now, for the sake of technology, you're going to adopt this thing that makes you take 2 or 3 extra steps, you're not going to do it. Hospitals don't have time to do more for the sake of adopting technology, and they would rather have a spreadsheet on a clipboard hanging on a wall than do the 2 or 3 extra things, mostly because your software doesn't integrate with their PIMS, or you think it's a better workflow to do it like that. Like, they might think it's great technology, but it's just not worth the extra steps repeated for 45 appointments a day.
Yeah, I think on that, the perspective I'll bring is that's not just a veterinary industry issue. That's we all have mental models, right, that we all follow, and something has to really create value for me to make a change. I was a late adopter of smartphones, and even though I'm in technology, I say that freely. But I agree with what you're saying, Adam. The veterinary practices, it used to be that every 30 years they change software, and they're starting to change more quickly, I should say, based on some of the research you and John are doing. But I think you do have to basically show enough value for someone to go through the pain of change, because it is painful until someone solves how you can, maybe we have this topic later, how you can make a change without the pain. Like, pain-free implementation would be amazing. But no one solved that yet. I've tried in industries. I've tried to do overnight conversions. No one's done it yet. So the pain's there. It has to be pretty valuable.
Yeah. And the appointments don't stop. Right. And that's the problem. Right. So, there's the friction. And I think the software companies with, the really dedicated implementation teams and customer success teams and support teams, even if they're not the most cutting edge technology wise, I think those companies do better for hospitals than, the latest gee whiz bang feature that, because it was on TechCrunch.
I also think one thing that, we've got a new software at the urgent care we just opened. We're going to switch my hospital, like Old Ridge, to that software as well. It's very helpful when, especially the smaller companies, will say, this is going to take a couple days, or this is like, they don't have an immediate fix, or they tell me no, rather than like, "Oh yeah, we've got it, like no problem," and then it doesn't happen, right? Like, "Oh, there was a problem with the software, pounds to kilograms and kilograms to pounds." Okay, well, now which one works better? Okay, kilograms. So we're just doing everything in kilograms. If you tell me that, I can fix it on my end, no problem. Yeah. If you tell me that it's fixed and it's not, I get my very brittle patience just snaps. I think, your independence and your candor with Vet Software Hub is really valuable, because I think it won't let software companies sweep stuff under the rug.
Yeah.
Oh, that wasn't a problem. That was never, no, it was no thing. It's like, own it, fix it, move on, or own it and let me fix it, and we can move on.
Bill, if I
Yeah,
can figure out a way to stop them from sweeping things under the rug, then I'll consider that a huge success. Maybe a
Well,
little.
I think the first step is the non-bias you have, that like objective look. That's really the main part that's gonna make them really have to be honest, because you'll
I know,
be
they're gonna be
honest
scared as
going
hell.
forward, right?
Well,
So Bill,
I can't-
what?
yeah, I can't
Bill,
be
can you
bought,
talk
and-
about
and
your?
Some have tried.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine, man, because you start making some rumble, and all the companies are like, all right, we need this guy on our side.
Yeah.
Advertising A, B, or C, because everybody trusts him now. So, because they don't trust us, they need to trust him. Let's make our company, him the face of our company, and then we'll get some trust that way. So I'm glad you're not going into that kind of stuff. But I wanted to ask Bill, what can you just went through the process? How was your process in choosing your software and what are your add-ons and can you speak a little bit to that?
I don't know that anybody should replicate my process. I don't think my process is a very good one.
Just throw it out there. Let's see.
I liked the fact that we switched to Lupa. We switched from Digital to Lupa, and we opened with Lupa. I liked that they were very motivated into the U.S. market. I liked that they were very organized, right? Like when we started onboarding, they had the whole onboarding plan, the whole timeline, the whole thing laid out, right? Like they had someone dedicated and assigned to us. So that
Did they go in person? Anybody go in person?
They haven't come out yet, because
okay,
they want to come out once Old Ridge is fully onboarded.
Mm-hmm.
And I am the rate limiting factor here, not them. And
okay,
it's just the fact that the urgent care has taken up a lot more time than I anticipated, which is again my fault. But I think they've done they feel like they have the organization professionalism that is uncommon in new tech startups, right? Like they have a level of operational discipline that you don't always see. I don't always see from maybe those companies stay away from me. That might be a self-selecting thing, but that I don't always see in. It's hard, right? In new companies, right? Nobody's like, hey, we're super organized. Nobody wants to invest in that company.
Yeah,
they want to invest in features and big ideas, not like Covet just got SOC 2 integration, or not SOC 2 accreditation, and that's a big deal. Like that's super important for data security and organizational management, but most vets have no idea what that means, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that.
Actually, that you touched on a awesome point I wanted to talk about a lot, and having Chris here is great. Is the whole data.
We have a lot of software people on this call. Yeah, we have genuine software.
I know.
Yeah, it's cool.
And it's really cool because one thing I want to talk about, which I agree with you, Bill. A lot of vets are not aware of how the most valuable asset of their clinics is their data and all the data they've accumulated, especially long-standing clinics that have years and years of patient information, all that, valuable data that could be stolen, quote unquote, or poached by bigger companies. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about that. And I think everybody here has a little bit to contribute to that. For example, I remember when we were signing Chewy prescription approvals and all that, and a lot of us weren't aware of what that would turn into, right? Greg, did you do a lot of those ever? A lot of those Chewy approvals and all the clinics you've worked?
Yes, I get a lot of Chewies.
A lot of Chewies, a lot of, and I feel like all that data cannot turn a lot into what we're seeing now, with a company now building clinics and most likely using a lot of that data to really, be efficient on their decisions. But I know Chris is a big data person, and I wanted to pick his brain on that. Like, how can clinics protect their data from being poached from bigger companies, or how can they make it fair, in terms of getting some return on that data? Like, if they are being used, like, how can clinics go about doing that? Like, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, demand it. Give me my fucking data or I'm going to someone else. Plain and simple.
Okay.
Don't even negotiate. If they're not willing to give it to you, don't play with them. Just go to a different field. I'm dealing with a veterinarian right now. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, I'm dealing with a veterinarian right now that she's got 8 years of Google Ads data that is behind someone else's Google Ads account. And so she wants to leave and she can't. And their response is, pay me X dollars and I'll let you leave and you can have your website, but you can't have your data because it's in our account and we can't share it with you, but I'll take a screenshot for you. So she's like, what do I do? And I said, leave. It's going to be painful, but it's either going to be painful now or it's going to be painful later, but leave. And then ask whoever it is that you're going to how they manage data. And the only thing you need to hear is it's your data. We don't manage it, like we're a curator for you, but it's essentially your data. You can take it with you. You can leave whenever you want to go. And so I had, I was on another webinar for a similar question that was brought up. And we talked about data ownership and transparency of what's going on with the data in the background. And it's interesting that, when there's a perceived advantage, and I'm sure Adam will agree with me on this. It's traditional thinking in software from a long time ago. But essentially, if I own your data, I can hold you captured in my market. And so it's essentially handcuffs. And so if you can't export it and you can't take it, they think that you can hang on to them. And there was a time where they did, like people just didn't have access to resources to pull them out. But those resources are now becoming very available, very easy, very available.
You can do it with quad code.
Right. Yeah. And so there are so many tools now that are available. And we talk about the veterinary medicine and kind of the traditional approach, because the veterinarians and the practice owners, the practice managers focus on operations and medicine, not in that particular order, but that's what their focus is. Not everyone's like Bill, who's a practice owner and stays on top of AI, stays on top of software, has a genuine interest in it. And Bill will tell you, like, this doesn't just happen for an hour a week. Like, Bill's passionate about it. Like, he tries it, he uses it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's very daunting for someone who doesn't have access or experience in the market on knowing who they can trust. So I'm going to drop this little knowledge bomb. I shared it with Megan in the podcast that I did last week. So Adam's one of these hubs, pardon the pun on your name, but there are other hubs as well. And so I called Adam out in the podcast. Like, if you have questions, call Adam, because Adam doesn't, like, you're taking the approach where the veterinary industry, for reasons that I won't get into on the podcast, because this could go on for a long time, but there's a huge pay to play aspect to the veterinary industry. Like, if you want to play, if you want to get advertising, if you want access to our market, whatever it is, you're going to pay me a certain price. And Adam doesn't do that. So Adam gives a third-party perspective. I don't know what you charge. I don't know if you do charge, but I know that you're not getting paid from the software companies to put someone on a higher rank than someone else. And having that third-party perspective, that unbiased approach to analyzing what's going on, and we talked about it, you guys mentioned it earlier on in the podcast, is that practice A in small town, wherever they are, and practice B in the same town might be using the same software, and the adoption internally might be preventative for the success. There's many reasons for it. It's no one's fault. It's just the way it is. So when you can find a third party that can give you access to information, and this is what I shared with Megan. Megan is sometimes a better advocate or knowledge hub for what software to use for one of her customers than I can be, because she's got access to 500 or 600 different veterinarians where she can reach into, like, hey, look at, this is our client base. This is our network. And we can reach in and we can say, hey, without bias, I've got, here are the 5 things that the veterinarian or the startup is looking for, or the existing company is looking for. These are the challenges that they've had. This is what they're looking to overcome. And she can reach into the market and get access to data, and then bridge that discussion with someone like Adam or myself or whoever it may be. I mean, Bill's a good guy too, because Bill's on the ground using it.
Can I plug Chris's software for a minute here? Because the reason Chris Tremblay isn't...
I'm listening, but I'm going to mute.
Mine were barking too just now. So it's part of that makes it a veterinary podcast. Like if there's no dogs barking, there is not veterinary. Yeah.
What about cats? What about cats? Stop it.
Cats too. Cats walking through the keyboard. And...
My cats are louder than my dog. So
the Amazon people, speaking of software, someone told me that all the Amazon delivery guys or people, whoever they are, they have an internal software where they like flag, like, these people are rude, these people have dogs, this is whatever it is. I do not want to see what the profile is from the Amazon people about my dog when she goes off like that. But if anyone's hacking into that to find out what house to break into, mine's not going to be one of them. There's a big, loud black dog. So sorry for the interruption.
No, I was going to hype you up because you have practice experts and manage SEO and reputation management online for my practices, plural now. And you do an excellent job, but you've never once held me up about it or said, like, you've been more pissed at the people who screwed with my website and like, I don't remember. And like stuck
I
the
could
website.
Choke someone for what they did to you. Honestly.
I don't even know who did it. Like
right.
And so, like all those, for lack of a better term, booby traps that were like trying to extract the website from, who had it.
So Bill's website was held hostage by paid software plugins on the back end, so that if we tried to pull away, it was going to break his website and he would have to go and build another one. And so, interestingly enough, so I know who the people were that built Bill's software because I could trace their email back. They're not the only ones. You're not the only one. It's their part of their business practice.
It's their business model.
So right, and so here are the handcuffs again, right? So we talk about data, like now we're talking about websites, which is a lifeline for a lot of veterinary practices, right? And so someone's got a booby trap in the background. Okay, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go to someone else, and then as soon as they move the name servers over, the website breaks, or as soon as they cancel a plugin, the website breaks. It's terrible.
So one of the problems, Chris, with your strategy, which is just a challenge, is the switching cost for a lot of practices. And these things is big, and maybe I'm sure Adam, you can talk about that too. But I know any big purchase, like I'm looking to buy a car right now, and actually it was Adam was the only person who replied, yes, I've used it, but I asked people if they used Carvana before because I want a recommendation from someone else before I go off and use a service for the first time. That's who I am. But moving from one car to another is painful for me, but not life-changing. It's not like I have to transfer anything. Moving from one software to the other, like threatening to leave, especially if you're a large corporate group, it can take you years to leave. So I wonder actually if that tactic is effective as a real tactic in all cases in your experience.
It is.
It's not with PIMS. Like if you threaten a PIMS company that you're going to leave, they don't. They're like, all right, good luck. Right?
But that's why it's effective with the PIMS.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why it's effective because essentially they take the hands-off approach of great, it's all on you. See you later. Let me know if you need a hand with anything, but we won't be available.
But what you're saying, like, and it's not it's websites, it's PIMS, it's Google Ad Managers, it's if you're using an email campaign tool, right? So one of the things I talk about on the site, and then when I work with practices one-on-one, is you always ask, how do I get my data if I decide to leave before you sign anything? Like, what does it cost? What exactly specifically do I get back? Show me a sample of what that would look like. And how long does it take? Right. These are questions that anytime you engage with a SaaS company where your work product is going to be stored on their physical servers or in the cloud somewhere, you're entitled to that work product. And it's not just medical records, right? It's email templates, it's two-way text conversations, Google ad data, all of it. It should be exportable to you if you decide to leave.
How do vets get ready for that in the front end? Like what kind of questions should they be asking to know that that's going to go okay?
Yeah, so I think references. Now, with leaving, it's always you'll never get a reference of somebody who left, right? Like they're like, oh yeah, we'll look for that for you, wink, wink. But I just think it's important. Like, what is your policy on me getting access to my data? What does it cost? How long does it take? Not just when I leave. I could decide next Tuesday, I want to see my data. Can I do that?
And there are perfectly legitimate reasons to pull your data just to evaluate it, right?
100%.
Yep.
Right. I'm hiring a consultant to help me with some marketing,
right,
P&L work, right? I need access to this data. What does that look like? Are you going to charge me to get it out? Right. And this is why, like, I'm incredibly passionate about, especially with PIMS, open APIs. So at a minimum, you should be able to read out of the system everything that you put in, everything, right? Whether you want to hire a local contractor to build a reporting system for you, you want to hand it over to a shadow PIM system to have a hot backup, whatever you want. And PIMs that say, well, we'll let you have some of it, but not all of it. You got to ask hard questions about that.
And I think how fast things are moving with software, there's a new of something so quick, right? Like people should have the freedom to change very easily, and that open API will allow that better.
Yeah. Well, and then the other problem that we're going to have is very shortly, some of the changes in workflows we're going to see with agentic AI around automation. Like, I was just talking to a practice yesterday, and I said, and they were in Minnesota, and I said, imagine, there's a snowstorm and it's heavier than you thought. And you can just text your practice and say, hey, we're 3-hour delay today. The software calls all your employees or texts all your employees, lets them know, update your Google My Business to let you know it's a closing today, update your website automatically, and then reaches out to your appointments and says, hey, we have to reschedule you.
How far away do you think we are from that?
That could be done. Somebody could build that today.
I think it's this year. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's possible for me, who can't write code. I could probably duct tape something together.
Absolutely. But like, again, you've got to be able to read your employee data out of somewhere, the PIMS or a separate database, your client and appointment data, so that you could reach out to those. So that's why those APIs to you as a practice owner are super important, because if you couldn't do it yourself, you could pay somebody to do that, and it would be a pretty simple project.
So Adam, I have a question. So it seems like, I know you wrote a bit about this, but in the human side, Epic and Cerner have locked up the desktops for the most part in doctors' offices and in CRMs. Most businesses, HubSpot and Salesforce, have seemed to lock it up. Everyone's using the same ones. Why, in the past month, have I talked to 2 small startups who are building PIMs? What's their motivation, knowing that it's such a crowded space, to come in when what you're saying, I think it's true as well. It feels like building just a basic patient client database that offers real strong, robust security, and then opening it up is one strategy. Trying to be best in class in every module, when you're competing against the established players, feels really problematic. Why are people jumping into the space still?
So because nobody's really solved the problem, right? There's no PIMs that anybody, like in medical, you say, hey, what's the best software to use for my doctor's office? Epic. Everybody will just tell you Epic, right? There's no PIMs that is that shining star where the whole industry is going to go, this is the one that you should probably have. So, you see investors and technologists who think, like, there's articles in the New York Times about how companion animal medicine is recession proof. It's growing, outpacing, other economic factors. Hey, I'm a pet lover. I can write code. And they don't know how brutal the market is.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And so they get started.
That's the other part of this. If we talk about open APIs, when we we can be in an echo chamber here on LinkedIn. We all think we're
Yeah.
hearing them, but getting that message out to the practices, and Bill knew about this lupus software, but most people would have walked by that booth 100 times at a trade show because it's relatively, well, actually it was pretty decent size this year. But just you're building it, then you have to get the market. It's slow to grow. All those things are really challenging, and it feels like building a module that integrates with the software and being best of class there seems just like such a smarter place to start.
Yeah, but
you're on the open APIs.
Do you saw the PIM survey data? Like 77% of the market is controlled by 2 companies, right? And they are not known to be friendly players to third-party developers.
Yeah.
So if I'm a really talented technologist, I have funding, I love pets, and I want to get into this market, I would take a look and say, look, 77% of the market is unavailable to me. Yeah, I think I'll go do cannabis, or I'll go do med spas, right? Because they're all open. They all have open APIs. It's a lot easier for me to gain ground and acquire clients there. So, some of the PIMS companies get mad at me when I say this, but the lack of open APIs, I think, has severely hurt innovation in software in the veterinary industry.
But you've also heard me tell the story about probably a decade ago, and I was working for a software vendor, one of the 2 you mentioned at the time. We probably got 15 of us in a room at Western Vet Conference to talk about an open API standard from Europe. We all started to point at each other and say, you first, right? None of us wanted to put it on our backlog and do it. What's the tipping point this time that might change that in your mind?
I think AI. I think agentic AI is really going to force these companies, and agentic AI and how it drives consumer behavior. So I'll give you a great example. Two-way texting. In 2019, businesses weren't doing two-way texting. People called, right? COVID and millennials really changed that in a profound way, where people wouldn't do business with an SMB if they didn't have a texting number. In the not too distant future, UIs for your software like Gmail or your web browser, they're not going to matter. You're going to be able to create a UI on the fly to be the color you want, to use the fonts you want. It's going to be completely customized to what you want, right? These PIMS companies are not going to be able to keep up with how consumers are demanding that experience be.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to open up and let these, Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT into their API system and build MCP servers so that those dynamic interfaces can be created. I think the App Store on iPhones goes away in 5 years, and iPhones are just custom. What's that, Bill?
Like the MCPs for the PIMs and everything else, and people could, because the other problem, and I can't believe I'm about to say something that might be construed as sticking up for the software companies, but veterinary practices are not as standardized as hospitals, right? Like the insurance companies have pressured doctors' offices and hospitals to operate like a single way. Like, there's 6 practices in my hometown of 3,500 people, and I doubt any of them are remotely close to each, like only in proximity in how they operate, right? So I think when you're saying like nobody's cracked the problem, it's like that's because there's 30,000 practices and 35,000 different problems.
That's right.
So
100%.
But that to me is the reason. Like, open the APIs.
Yeah.
Let people and if one of the big companies is like, wow, we got half our users using this feature, maybe we build it ourselves, or maybe we acquire this company or something. Like, that is the natural progression of innovation, rather than be like, no, you're not allowed to do that.
That's what I'm presenting at Savvy in May, right? Is a data store that's so governable. You as a practice owner or manager have to give the company's developers permission to look at your data dynamically. They can't just go into the database like they can today, right? Extreme governance on whatever level you want, and then whatever interface that you want, you can have. It's probably going to come, out of the box with something to make it usable on day one. But if you want your calendar for your hospital to be Google Calendar, who cares, right? If you want to use Gmail as your communication platform, who cares? The record it's what's important. And those are pretty standardized.
Right.
There's taste and preference, but it's got to be kind of basically
as we get
foundationally.
I think that that's the thing. Even though there's so many different clinics, they work so differently. The top 4 tasks that are done every day at a vet clinic are the same tasks, right?
Yeah.
So I think what makes the most sense is that the big PIMS companies get really good at those 4 or 5 things, and then open up to companies that could be better than them at the other specific tasks around that, right? Like record keeping should be a main one, and maybe even integrating an online pharmacy could be a really big part of it. But when they start adding little things here and there that look worse than independent ones, then I think that's where the big PIMS company don't really perform the best.
A client I met with just last week said, hey, he was telling me about a problem that we're having with their soap notes in the PIMS. And they opened a ticket back in June, and it's still not fixed. Yet the PIMS company in the fall launched an AI scribe.
There it is.
Right.
There it is.
And they were like, I can download an AI scribe from the App Store. I don't need you to build one. I need you
for
to
free.
fix my fucking problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Founders love features.
Of course they do.
Well,
Founders love new features, and I'm like, you got to do the fundamentals.
But I feel like adding more features there's other companies out there doing better than you makes you look worse. Like your AI scribe sucks, so your PIM sucks. And when AI starts becoming a sales point for software, if people start focusing on that part and the big players are not performing there, the whole thing's gonna look bad, right? So I think that's where the future, like you're saying, is opening it up. Get good at the 4 things that every vet clinic does, that are gonna be the 4 things that every vet clinic will be doing, and get good at that.
And get good at securing the data, because I don't know if you guys have been watching what's going on at Anthropic with Claude and Mythos, but AI is going to be a beast at attacking all kinds of data. And I hear about, now there are practices that are getting locked out of their on-prem servers and held for ransom. That's only going to get worse in the future, right? Because instead of a group of hackers doing that one at a time, you can do that 20,000 hospitals at a time.
And the irresponsible use of AI to code things by guys like me,
right,
is going to expose practices like mine to that kind of attack. Because why are they going after somebody who's got a cybersecurity company when my dumbass is like, God, he doesn't even lock the doors. This is way easier.
Yep. And they'll find you way easier now. They'll find you.
But Bill, imagine if you could screw around with AI, but know that your data store is so well governed that no matter how sloppy you are, nobody else is getting in.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
along those lines, I wanted to talk a little bit about David's app because I think that's very kind of like in the front lines of innovation that I think it should be louder. So I want Dave to talk a little bit about, he created an app to take better care of his own pet. And then the vet adopted that app and actually uses it to take care of his cat. And I think that's really amazing. And it kind of makes sense with what we're talking about, leaving your PIMS open to even people like Dave creating little things that can help vets on a daily basis. And can you talk about that software, Dave?
Yeah. First of all, I'm nervous I left the door open now that Bill brought that up because Cloud Code apparently released all source code a week ago, and I thought, oh, someone's just going to take this and run with it. Offline, I can talk about my vulnerabilities
too. Yeah.
But yeah, I think the message for people listening here is I built a software using Cloud Code that specifically helps me create a care plan for my cat who's got a complicated diagnosis. And I can manage her treatment plan every day. And we just went into the vet yesterday, and Dr. Swally doesn't use it religiously, but because I just asked her to take a look at it. But she said a couple of times, rather than bothering me to see how the cat was doing, she logged in to check. And so it became this way for her to see the care I was providing between visits. And I've pitched this idea for years. No one in companies I worked for anywhere would do anything with it. So I just did it myself because I could. And I think that's the message is, I don't know if it's commercially ready for anyone else. It's not. But whatever Bill's building for himself, I know the AI podcast team did a podcast this week where they had 3 different vets who built their own thing. That's going to happen more and more. We're going to build our own things. And this was extremely easy for me. I mean, I'm a software product manager, so I know how to write requirements. I know what crappy software looks like. So I guess maybe I'm a little faster than some, but I've never been able to write a line of code. And I had this software stood up in a matter of hours. And I just this morning spent 45 minutes fixing a report. And like, it's really, really in our grasp now. And 6 months ago, I couldn't have done this. So, and John, that's the headline for me is if you want to do it, do yourself. I think all the PIMs, even the idea of having them build 4 different modules, just focus on the patient client database. And there are companies out there doing best in class inventory. They're doing best in class scheduling. They're doing best in class client communication. Just be humble enough to acknowledge that you can't be the best in all. And then let people like me play too, right? I'd love to be integrated. I'd love to write tool to be used by other people.
And not to be too self-promotional, but that one of the other many reasons why I started Vet Software Hub is because I knew this was when I started playing with AI a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I knew this was going to happen. I knew vets were going to start tinkering at some point and building things, and people were going to build things to help animals. And when you build something cool and it's helpful for you, you're going to want to share it.
Heck yeah.
So, anybody can submit software to Vet Software Hub, right? And list your stuff and share it with the community. And maybe another vet finds it and goes, oh, that's a cool tool. I would try. And now there's a connection. Maybe it's not even a sale. Maybe it's just like, hey, I'm sharing this thing with everybody. And I think, there's no other discovery vehicle for, these veterinary specific softwares.
I love that. Just quickly, when I was at the Veterinary Innovation Summit last year, and I don't think, Bill, you didn't make it, but there were more than one. There were actually a handful of veterinarians that are specifically trying to learn how to build their own stuff. And it would be such a neat world where they could be either inspired by seeing what other people have built in a section on your site, Adam, or just literally see it as sort of an a la carte selection where maybe Bill built something that's useful for someone else. And they'll say, well, I'm going to download that and try it in my practice. They would know about it. Otherwise, I would not have known about, well, no one will know about my software because I haven't promoted it, but you're not going to know about it unless there's a place to cross.
And like you guys aren't going and getting a 10 by 10 at VMX and, putting your app on a table, right? Like it's
taxes first.
Yeah. So this is just a window, I hope eventually to connect, really smart doctors tinkering with AI, building helpful stuff, and kind of bypassing the, trade shows and Google ads and all that other cost that has a very poor ROI actually.
Can I throw a question back to you, John? I'll be the interviewer.
Yeah,
because you and I talked recently about the AI infatuation, if you will, the gold rush, whatever we want to call it. And I'm these people know me well. Know I'm doing a lot of research on aging too, and the fact that people are getting older shouldn't be a surprise, but we're suddenly rushing and acting like it is. The AI insurgence and the rush, I think Adam saw it coming, projected it, but I think one of your criticisms of it, John, is it's moving other priorities aside.
Yeah.
Right. And so what are your thoughts on that? Like, how much are we putting too much effort into AI and software now? Should we be focusing back on some other core stuff?
I just feel like sometimes, we do live in an echo chamber, in our world and our social media. And, we kind of sometimes see a lot of buzz or talk about certain things, and it starts becoming like the focus of the conversations. And then, we have a lot of very impactful people in veterinary medicine that, kind of start getting stuck in that little niche of, AI scribes or a little corner. And then we have, the chance to target like really, really impactful topics like, how are we going to evolve telemedicine in animals, or the veterinary client patient relationship, in terms of how patient care really will be impacted on the staff involved. So, I guess for me, it's because there's so many different veterinarians, many different ways to practice medicine. I think what happens is that sometimes there's windows of revenue and new innovation, and the industry kind of all starts going that way a little too much, and kind of putting all our resources into the one thing that we can tap into latest and what's creating more buzz. And I think there's a little bit of disconnect between, you know, the high leaders and the social media and what's really needed down in the trenches, which is what Adam's doing with software, right? Where Adam is basically a big example of what the bridge is between the companies and the leaders in the companies and what's happening down at the vet clinics. And I feel like veterinary software and AI, it's a chunk of it, because it's the coolest, the latest, what's creating the most, you know, noise. But are things happening in the background of veterinary medicine that are really dangerous, and we need to stay aware of those things. And I don't want to ramble too much, but you know, we are dealing with patients that cannot really speak, so you know, we need to be careful about protecting the physical examination in pets, especially that early physical examination to create that initial relationship. We need to be careful with creating professions within veterinary medicine that are not really needed. Colorado had a VPA position created. Florida's next. You know, those are big picture things that I think we should be putting a lot of resources into protecting our patients, you know, and not to say that technology is not important, because look, we're doing a whole hour on software and technology. So I think it's really important. I think it impacts the medicine, it impacts the patients, impacts the clients. But there's more to it than that, right? There's I think other things that we need to incorporate in our talk that shouldn't be left behind, and you know, we should be paying attention to what's happening in the background that could really be, you know, dangerous for our patients. So I think that's a little bit of my criticism on that.
I'd like to add to that, because this conversation has got me thinking, like, right now, you know, it's absolutely true. I think the you know, the telemedicine is objectively worse than in-person medicine, right? Like, no matter what the BVCA publishes, right? Like, I think you need a physical exam, and there's no replacement for it. But what happens if or when we've got technology that keeps better track of animal health than we can do, like, with a physical exam? And not that it's on the horizon, but it's a possibility. And I think it's a possibility that veterinary medicine as a profession needs to start thinking about.
I have so many thoughts.
Yeah, and that's where
we don't have to stop it now.
Yeah. What the key for that is? The key is that people want to go see Dr. Bill. They want to see Dr. Bill. They want to hang out with Dr. Bill. They want to see Dr. Bill in person. They want their dog right? Yeah. And they want their dog to interact with the doctor. They want the doctor to pet their dog and sit on the floor with it. And they want, you know, that hey, Mrs. So-and-so, I know who you are. You're important to me. Your pet's important to me. You know, you those are things that AI cannot do yet, right? Maybe in 10 years, you know. But we're not there yet, you know.
If I could share a little from the nerd perspective, I'm very good at staying in my lane, right? And I'm grateful that you guys are having these discussions to advance the care side of medicine. And because I have 4 cats, 3 of them are over the age of 15. I need you guys. But when I think about AI, I think about it like this. In 1850, it took 45 days to plant an acre of crop. And then the tractor came and shortened that to 4 hours. And that's what's happening with AI now. You know, the AVMA put out a paper not too long ago that I think the error rate among veterinarians was like 5.8 per 1,000. I don't know if that's true or some kind of made up number, but 0.05% is pretty damn good. But if an AI tool comes along that's 0.01%, I'm going to ask my vet if they're using it, right? I still want to see my vet. I still want my vet to know my cats by name when she sees them. But I'm a technology guy, and I'm going to be very interested in how they're leveraging technology in the care of my pet. I look at the benefits of AI more in operational efficiency in the hospital. Since I came into this industry, I have heard over and over again that we want more time for personalized care. Well, nothing in the history of software can give you more time for personalized care than AI automation.
You know,
And every hospital should be leaning into that and trying to find ways to automate manual tasks with AI and software tools so they can pick up the phone and call a client and check in on Fluffy. Or they can spend that extra 5 minutes, in the exam room. But that's where I stay in my lane, and I don't go out.
It's a good general message. I think every clinic's different. They're gonna decide what fits their practice the best, right? And everybody's gonna at the end of the day choose what works for them.
When those farmers saw the tractors, some farmers said, "I'm never going to get a tractor. I need my hands in the dirt." They didn't last very long.
Adam, I just reread Grapes of Wrath. Reread that. I mean, that's the dystopian future that we hope doesn't happen with AI, but is happening with some layoffs in the for the first time ever, really, in the white collar environment, right? Because AI is driving people out of their homes. The tractors are going to run them over, just like they did in Grapes of Wrath.
Can I jump in and just throw a disclaimer out?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things, so I come out of the manufacturing industry, and automation's been happening essentially since, Henry Ford built the assembly line. So one of the things that we tell people, like, scale small. Don't worry about the fear of missing out. It's going to be there. You don't have to be the first to adopt. You can be, but there's risk by doing it. So, instead of converting your whole practice or multi-location business over to a software, scale small, piece it together instead of taking the risk. Don't feel like you're going to miss out. There's people that you can reach for. All the software companies out there want you to think that you're going to miss out if you don't adopt quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's risk there. The other way I put that, Chris, at least for me, is feel free to experiment. Right.
Yes.
There's a concept of a free roll in the world of, like, I guess it's in poker or something, where you can do something sometimes that you can roll back. Right. So you feel free to experiment, try things.
Tinker.
Yeah.
They don't always go full bore.
Good news is that we're gonna have Petra Harms next month for a whole hour on AI.
Nice.
So it's gonna be a whole hour just AI with Petra, and I think we all know her and respect her a lot. She's a veterinarian too. I think the one size fits all approach is not gonna work anymore. I think people need to really individually check out every clinic, talk to the people involved in operations more than anything, because the veterinarians' work might be affected somewhat by all this technology, but the operations of the clinics, I think, is where it really is impacting. And obviously, by a side effect, it'll impact the care. But I think the operations of clinics is where the future of all this technology is going to impact the most.
I hope that it's a way for the independent clinics to have a little more parity with the big corporations, right? So in the example of the closing for, the snow, right? In a big corporation, you have an operations team in another state that can reschedule those appointments and send out those messages. And, the practice doesn't have to worry about it. But if you're an independent hospital owner, it's just you. So to have an automation where you can just text your hospital and say, hey, 2-hour delay, and it just handles that all for you. Now that's one example of how you can kind of be on par with those teams in the corporates.
They're very true. I mean, that's where the AI will help. What's that, Bill?
It's a huge force multiplier for the administrative work. It's
yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable.
And another, I think we don't talk about it enough too, is, another thing that I was told when I first came in the industry is how, veterinarians and hospital staff are introverts. They love being with animals, not so much with people. And what I've seen,
very passive.
What I've seen hospitals have great success using ChatGPT and Claude for is drafting emails, drafting a text message. Like, how do I convey this? I have to collect AR. I'm really uncomfortable. What do I say? Right. And it really kind of takes that anxiety away. Now they have a little bit of a script to read, so that they're not trying to stumble over words. And I think that's
a good
point. Takes the emotional burden out of it, right?
Yeah.
It does.
Those things that we're uncomfortable with, it really lightens that emotional burden. And I'm not I would never write like a sympathy card of the AI.
Yeah.
The AR, the
sure.
conceivable one, I don't care if I use it.
Or, hey, you were a no-show for your last 3 appointments. I'm going to need a $50 deposit. Right?
Yeah. Right.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Great example. Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Adam? I don't want to take more of your time. I really appreciate you being here. Always feels short.
I'm really grateful for you guys to invite me on. You know, when I started this thing, my goal was like to help one practice manager, hospital owner make a PIMS decision successfully and not go through the stress of, 10 hours of demos and gut wrenching choices. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. Even if it's only, one a year, I'll be happy. I will drop a little breaking news for the FlareVet
Here we go.
podcast. I've started working on a book. So look for that at the end of the year on just a blueprint for making a PIMS choice, how to evaluate, how to discover, how to look at contracts.
Excellent.
But I'm also going to include real stories from people who have been through it and kind of what they would have done differently each step of the way. So hopefully it becomes a resource for, folks who don't want to reach out to me directly. They can just sit down and read the book and laugh at my writing style.
As long as
and
you
no
write
AI used at all.
Yeah.
No AI.
Right.
No AI.
I'm working with a ghostwriter because when I was in high school, I was in English as a second language with the Spanish kids. That's how bad my writing skills are. So I really needed somebody to help. But she's great, and she's done a lot of work in the veterinary space. So she's really helping me through the whole thing. But no AI.
Cool. Yeah, great.
Just humans.
Grateful for that. That's really cool. I mean, I use AI. We all in this room, I think, do a little bit. But I'm really cool news. I'll be looking out for that book. Hopefully, maybe have you sign a copy. I collect signed books, so
only if you sign a copy as well, John. So
nice.
By the time the book comes out, FlareVet's going to be getting thousands of views a month, and you're going to be like, Adam, who?
Yeah, I know, right? I know. I'll look at my phone and be like, "Who's that guy?" I don't think I've ever met him. No, actually, the last time I talked to you, is when the Eagles lost to the 49ers. And then a couple of weeks later, the Texans lost to the Patriots. So if I said anything that it sounded bad or that sounded aggressive, I apologize. It was a rough night. So on to the next year.
Not at all. I was trying to think, John, when we met at VMX, did I buy you the beer or did you buy me the beer? I couldn't remember.
I owe you a beer. I owe you. Yeah, you bought it.
I'll come calling for that one.
All right. Well, you're welcome to anytime. Any final thoughts? Anybody else? Everybody else want to talk about anything else before we quit?
No, I think this is very valuable. I think Adam's doing really good work in the space. I think the independent aspect is a really big deal for independent practice owners like me who, aren't just handed a plate of options that's weighted by, who had the biggest ad spend.
Yeah.
So this is, you can pick the best software for you, and that in itself can be an equalizer.
Yeah. I think having open conversations and having people like Adam that are honest and objective, and then people like us that talk about things without any bias or anybody pitching money at us for saying the right thing. I think it's really the way to go is what we're going to move us forward in vet medicine. So I appreciate, all of you and Greg that was here briefly. He had to run, but I appreciate him as well. And we'll meet you next month, everybody, with Petra for AI. I hopefully you're following what we're doing, and very happy to have people paying attention to what we're doing. So again, thanks, Adam, and thanks to the roster. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, everybody. I had a great time. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.